The glass door of Nexus Solutions Austin headquarters hissed shut behind Ethan Caldwell, severing him from the empire he'd helped forge. At 38, he stood in the scorching Texas afternoon, heat rising off the asphalt like a taunt. His reflection in the tinted windows revealed a man unbroken, square jaw set, dark eyes burning with something colder than rage. In his hands, a cardboard box held the remnants of a decade, a signed baseball, a chipped coffee mug, and a stack of framed photos. Betrayal's weight pressed harder than the box ever could. Inside, the office had been a theater of cowardice. Colleagues who'd once cheered his record-breaking quarters now hid behind screens, fingers hammering keyboards to dodge his gaze. Ethan had walked past cubicles, the air conditioner's drone swallowing their guilty silence. Only Karen, the HR rep, a nervous wreck clutching a clipboard, dared speak. "Standard exit process," she muttered, eyes on the floor. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. This wasn't my call." It wasn't her call. It was Dylan Harper's. The new vice president of sales, a Silicon Valley slickster with a fake grin and a fetish for jargon, had stormed into Nexus 3 months ago. At 32, Dylan strutted like he'd cracked the code to success. Cold calls, scripted pitches, and a revolutionary sales model that dismissed relationships as relics. To Dylan, Ethan was a fossil, a holdover from Nexus's gritty startup days, when 12 hustlers crammed into an Austin loft, running on cheap coffee and raw ambition. Ethan, employee number 7, had been the heartbeat of that grind, building client bonds that turned Nexus into a $200 million zero-cents beast. Last quarter, his deals alone drove 55% of the company's revenue, yet here he was, discarded like trash. The elevator ride down was a plunge into clarity. As the floors ticked by, Ethan's fury sharpened into resolve. Dylan thought he'd won, thought he could erase Ethan's legacy with a memo and a smirk. But Dylan didn't know the clients. He didn't know Matt Donovan, who'd texted Ethan minutes after the firing, sensing trouble. He didn't know Ryan Keller or Chris Nolan, loyal clients already sniffing out the shift. Dylan had underestimated the one thing Ethan had spent 10 years cultivating: trust. The day had started like any other. Ethan rolled into Nexus's lot at 7:45, IE Meng, his F-150 parked under the sleek 8-story building off South Congress Avenue. Austin's skyline sparkled in the distance, a mix of glass towers and quirky murals, the city's blend of hustle and soul. Inside, the office buzzed, keyboards clacking, phones ringing, the faint stench of overbrewed coffee. Ethan's corner office, modest but earned, overlooked the Colorado River. On his desk, a signed baseball from a client's kid, a Longhorns mug, chip from late nights, and photos of his wife Claire and their 2 kids at Zilker Park. A shelf held awards, Sales Leader of the Year 3 years running. He didn't care much for the plaques, but they were proof of his worth. At 9:15, Karen knocked. "Ethan, Dylan wants you in the boardroom. Now." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "No heads up? What's this about?" Perrin squirmed. He didn't say. Just be ready. The boardroom was a glass-walled shrine to Nexus's success, its long oak table polished to a mirror shine. Dylan sat at the head, his tailored blazer and gelled hair screaming outsider. Across from him was Sarah Langley, the CEO who'd hired Ethan a decade ago. Sarah's face, usually warm, was a blank mask. Ethan sat, his gut twisting. "Ethan," Dylan began, his voice slick as a used car salesman, "you've done great work here, no question. But Nexus is evolving. We're rolling out a new sales model, data-driven, scalable, modern. Your approach, it's not aligning." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Not aligning? I closed $110 million 0 cents last quarter, 55% of revenue. What's not aligning about that?" Dylan leaned back, smug. "It's not just numbers, Ethan. It's vision. Your handshakes, steak dinners, golf games, they're outdated. We need efficiency, automation, cold outreach at scale." Ethan's eyes shot to Sarah. "You're buying this?" Sarah shifted, fingers tapping the table. Dylan's model has potential, Ethan. We're not saying you're not valuable. We'd like you to stay, maybe in a consulting role. Consulting? Ethan cut her off, his voice low but razor sharp. I built this company from a loft with 12 people. I brought in Matt Donovan, Brian Keller, Chris Nolan, clients who stay because they trust me. You're sidelining me for a guy who thinks sales is a fucking algorithm? Dylan smirked. Trust is cute, Ethan, but data doesn't lie. My team's already outperforming your accounts in key metrics. Stay. Learn the new way. Or? He shrugged, the threat bare. Ethan stood, chair scraping loud. I don't do or. He walked out, leaving his awards behind. Dylan shouted, You're screwing yourself, Caldwell. Ethan didn't look back. At his desk, Ethan packed with surgical precision. The baseball, a gift from Matt Donovan's kid after a $20 million 0-cents deal. The mug, battered from Nexus's early days. The photos, Claire's smile, a reminder of what mattered. His colleagues, once his crew ghosted him. Mark, who'd bought rounds after Ethan's last big win, stared at his screen like it held the meaning of life. Lisa, who'd begged Ethan for advice, shuffled papers. The office felt like a morgue. Karen appeared with the exit forms. Badge, laptop, phone, she said, voice barely audible. I hate this, Ethan. You save it, Ethan said, handing over the gear. He signed the papers, his signature a blade. In the elevator, alone, he let the fury boil. Dylan's smug face, Sarah's betrayal, the gutlessness of his team, it seared. But as the doors opened to the lobby, the heat shifted. Anger turned to fuel. Dylan thought he'd crushed him, but Ethan was far from done. Outside, Ethan's phone lit up. A text from Matt Donovan. Heard some punks on my account. You good? Lunch tomorrow? Shit's weird. Matt, a grizzled exec who'd built his logistics empire from one truck, was Ethan's first big client. They'd met at UT Austin, bonded over Shiner beers and Longhorns games. Matt had been Ethan's best man, the guy who'd held his hand when Claire's pregnancy hit rough patches. If Matt sensed trouble, others would too. Ethan typed back, I'm good, lunch sounds great, 1 p.m. at Salt Lick? Matt's reply was instant, hell yeah, Dylan's a tool, we'll talk. Ethan smirked. Dylan had no idea what he'd unleashed. Nexus's client list wasn't just names in a CRM. It was Ethan's network, built on trust, loyalty, and years of late-night calls. 58% of Nexus's business came from Ethan's relationships, half of them personal connections. Dylan could have his scripts and algorithms, but he couldn't replicate that. 3 months ago, Dylan Harper arrived at Nexus like a rock star. His hiring blasted in a company-wide email from Sarah, a visionary from Silicon Valley, she'd called him, hyping his track record at a San Francisco tech giant. Ethan had been skeptical, but open. He'd offered to walk Dylan through the client roster. Dylan brushed him off, saying he'd review the data first. Within weeks, Dylan's vision became a wrecking ball. He pushed scripted pitches, ignoring the nuanced relationships Ethan had nurtured. At a client dinner with Matt Donovan, Dylan had cut off Matt's story about his grandkid to pitch a new software add-on. Matt, red-faced, called Ethan later, "Who's this asshole? He's got no respect." Ethan smoothed it over, but the damage was done. Dylan's next move was to question Ethan's methods in a team meeting. Handshakes don't scale, he'd said, flashing a chart of cold call conversion rates. We need to modernize. Ethan fired back. Clients don't buy from scripts, they buy from people. The room went quiet, but Dylan's smirk said he'd already won Sarah over. Then came the isolation. Dylan stopped inviting Ethan to client meetings, instead taking junior reps who parroted his scripts. He'd comb through Ethan's client list, cherry-picking accounts for himself. Matt had warned Ethan, "This guy's gunning for you, watch your back." By 6 p.m., Ethan's phone was a war zone. Clients were calling, texting, sensing the shift. Ryan Keller, a manufacturing CEO, texted, "Some kid just emailed me about streamlining my account. Where you at, Caldwell?" Chris Nolan, a tech founder, called, "Ethan, you switching roles? Nobody told me shit." 16 major clients reached out within hours, all loyal to Ethan, all weary of Dylan's takeover. Ethan stood on his deck, the Austin skyline glittering across the river. He sipped bourbon, the burn matching the fire in his chest. Claire was inside, putting the kids to bed, unaware of the day's carnage. He'd tell her soon, but not yet. Not until he had a plan. His phone lit up again. Matt Donovan. "Dylan's gonna tank this. You gotta move?" Ethan stared at the message, the city's lights reflecting off the glass in his hand. Dylan had miscalculated. He thought Ethan was replaceable, thought clients were just contracts. But Ethan wasn't just a salesman. He was Nexus's foundation. He typed back, "I'm working on it. Tomorrow we start." The bourbon warmed his throat as he looked out at Austin, the city he'd helped Nexus conquer. Dylan had fired him, but he'd also handed him a weapon: freedom. Ethan wasn't done with Nexus. He was just getting started. The next morning, Ethan woke before dawn. Claire stirred as he kissed her forehead. "Everything okay?" she mumbled. "It will be," he said, his voice steady. He drove to Salt Lick, the iconic BBQ joint where he'd closed deals over brisket and ribs. Matt was already there, his pickup parked beside a row of Harleys. Inside, the smell of smoked meat and oak filled the air. Matt stood, clapping Ethan's shoulder. "Hell of a day, huh? What's the play?" Ethan slid into the booth, his eyes sharp. "Dylan thinks he can run Nexus without me." "He's wrong." Matt grinned, leaning forward. "Damn right. Half my team's ready to pull their contract if you're gone. What's next?" Ethan's mind raced. He could start his own firm, poach Nexus's clients and bury Dylan's vision in the dust. Or he could fight from within, rally the clients, and force Sarah to see the mistake she'd made. Either way, Dylan had started a war, and Ethan was ready to finish it. "First," Ethan said, "we eat, then we build." Matt raised his beer. "To building." The clink of glass echoed like a battle cry. The Austin skyline shimmered in the twilight, its glass towers reflecting the last embers of a brutal day. Ethan Caldwell stood on his deck, bourbon in hand, the burn in his throat mirroring the fire in his chest. The sting of Dylan Harper's betrayal had dulled, replaced by a cold, clear realization. Dylan's fatal mistake was underestimating the power of relationships. Ethan's phone buzzed relentlessly. Clients loyal to him, not Nexus, were already rebelling. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. Inside, Claire tucked their kids into bed, her soft hum drifting through the open window. Ethan hadn't told her about the firing yet. He would, but not until he had a plan to turn this ambush into a victory. His phone lit up again. Megan Walsh, a fiery CEO who'd trusted Ethan for years, was calling. He answered, bracing for impact. "Ethan, what the hell is going on?" Megan's voice crackled with fury. "Some Nexus kid just emailed me a canned pitch like I'm a nobody. I'm done with them. You're the only reason I stayed." Ethan's grip tightened on the glass. "I'm out, Megan. Dylan Harper's running the show now. He fired me this morning." Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. "That idiot. Ethan, you say the word and I'm pulling my account. $4 million a year. Gone. I don't do business with clowns." "Don't move yet," Ethan said, his voice steady but his mind racing. "Let's talk tomorrow. I've got something in the works." Megan snorted. "You better." "I'm not screwing around." As he hung up, an email pinged. Rachel Bennett, vice president at Pinnacle Systems, a rival firm Ethan had always respected. "Heard you're a free agent. Coffee tomorrow?" "Industry's buzzing." Ethan's pulse quickened. Rachel wasn't just fishing. She was hunting. Pinnacle was a powerhouse, and if clients were already talking, Dylan's house of cards was wobbling. The next morning, Ethan drove across Austin to meet Rachel. deliberately choosing a cafe far from Nexus's South Congress hub. The Driscoll Hotel's 1886 cafe, with its dark wood and leather booths, felt like neutral ground. Austin's morning bustle, tech bros, hipsters, and lobbyists, hummed outside, but inside the air was charged. Rachel, sharp in a tailored blazer, was already waiting, her eyes scanning him like a chess player sizing up a board. "Ethan," she said, sliding a coffee across the table. "Word's out. Nexus screwed up. Clients are asking if we're hiring you." Ethan leaned back, masking his surprise. "I was fast." Rachel smirked. "You're not just any salesman. Matt Donovan's already sniffing around, and he's not subtle." "So, what's your move?" Ethan sipped his coffee, buying time. "Dylan thinks he can replace me with scripts and algorithms. He's wrong. My clients, Matt, Megan, Ryan, Chris, they're loyal to me, not Nexus. 58% of their revenue walks with me." Rachel's eyes gleamed. "That's what I wanted to hear. Director role, 25% salary bump, full autonomy. You'd run your own show." Ethan's mind spun. It was a dream offer, but a red flag waved. "I've got a non-compete clause. 1 year, ironclad." Rachel waved it off. "Texas law's shaky on those. We've got lawyers who eat non-competes for breakfast. But to play it safe, we start with a 90-day consulting gig. You advise, we pay, and when the clause is dead, you're in." Ethan hesitated. Pinnacle was a leap, but it felt like stepping into a new arena with old enemies watching. Still, the clients were restless, and Dylan was fumbling. "Draw up the contract," he said. "I'm listening." Rachel slid a folder across the table. "Already did. Sign by tomorrow and we're live." By noon, Ethan was at Salt Lick, the BBQ joint where deals were sealed over smoked brisket. Matt Donovan was waiting, his weathered face set in a scowl. "Dylan's a disaster," Matt growled, tearing into a rib. "My team's pissed. $4 million in projects. On hold until I know what's up with you." Ethan kept his tone even. "I'm weighing options. Pinnacle's in play." Matt's eyes widened. "Pinnacle? Shit, that's a power move. If you go, I'm with you. Dylan can kiss my contract goodbye." Ethan didn't push, but the dominoes were falling. Back home, his phone buzzed again. "Ryan Keller, Nexus, sent some rookie to manage me. I'm shopping vendors. You got a plan?" Then Chris Nolan, "Heard you're out. Dylan's guy's a joke. What's your next step?" 3 more clients emailed, refusing to work with Nexus's new account managers. Ethan hadn't orchestrated this. It was organic, a rebellion born of loyalty, but it was spreading like wildfire. That evening, Sarah Lanley called. Ethan let it go to voicemail, then played it on speaker. Her voice was tight, laced with panic. "Ethan, we're hearing from clients. They're upset. Can we talk? This isn't what we wanted." Ethan didn't call back. He wasn't ready to play her game. But the next morning, Sarah tried again, catching him as he pulled into his driveway. "Ethan, please," she said, her tone softer but desperate. "Clients are pulling back. Matt's frozen his projects. Ryan's talking about switching vendors. What's going on?" Ethan kept his voice cold. "Clients choose trust, Sarah. You and Dylan bet on scripts. They're choosing me." Sarah hesitated. "We mishandled this. Let's make it right. Come back. 12% raise, same role. We'll smooth the transition." Ethan's laugh was sharp. "You think I'd trust you again? I'm done." Sarah's voice hardened. "Don't burn this bridge, Ethan. You're making enemies." He hung up, her warning echoing. Enemies. Dylan, Sarah, Nexus. The fight was escalating, and Ethan was ready. 2 days later, Ethan signed Pinnacle's consulting deal, a 90-day runway to freedom. He kept it quiet, but the industry was a small world, and whispers spread. Clients were moving, and Nexus was bleeding. Then came the bombshell. Chris Nolan forwarded an internal Nexus email, accidentally CC'd to him by a rattled junior rep. The subject, client retention strategy. Ethan's blood ran cold as he read. Nexus was playing dirty, blocking client data exports, reinterpreting contract terms to delay terminations by 5 to 6 months, and assigning aggressive account managers to re-educate clients. It was a scorched earth tactic, designed to trap clients and starve Ethan's momentum. "They're screwing us," Chris said on the phone, his voice shaking with anger. "This isn't business, it's war." Ethan's jaw clenched. He forwarded the email to Pinnacle's legal team, who confirmed the tactics were unethical but technically legal. "They're buying time," the lawyer said. "Nexus knows they're losing. They're desperate." Ethan didn't wait. He drafted a client guide, clear, concise, outlining their rights under Nexus contracts. He didn't send it directly. Instead, he organized a networking lunch at Austin's Four Seasons, inviting his top 16 clients. The room buzzed with tension. Matt, Megan, Ryan, Chris, and others, all furious, all ready to act. Ethan shared the guide, framing it as a tool, not a direct. "You've got options," he said. "I'm not telling you what to do, but you deserve to know what Nexus is pulling." Megan stood, her voice cutting through the room. "I'm done. I'm moving my account to Pinnacle. Ethan, you in?" Heads turned. Ethan kept his poker face. "I'm consulting with Pinnacle. If you move, I'll be there." The room erupted in murmurs. Matt slammed his fist on the table. "I'm in too. Screw Nexus." Ryan nodded. Chris raised a glass. By the end of the lunch, 12 clients formed an informal alliance, demanding Nexus honor their contracts or face legal heat. Ethan hadn't planned this, but he'd lit the fuse. Sarah called that night, her voice venomous. "Ethan, you're orchestrating this. Clients are threatening lawsuits. This is interference." Ethan's tone was ice. "I'm not your employee, Sarah. Clients are acting on their own. You made your bed." "You'll regret this," she snapped. "Nexus isn't defenseless." The threat hung heavy, but Ethan didn't flinch. He'd expected pushback, but Sarah's desperation hinted at something darker. Was Nexus planning more than legal games? He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of moves happening in shadows he couldn't see. The next week was chaos. Matt's company, a $4 million 0 cents annual account, formally paused all Nexus projects. Ryan's firm began transitioning to a new vendor, citing breach of trust. 3 more clients rejected Nexus's new account managers, demanding Ethan or no one. Pinnacle's legal team sent a cease and desist letter, accusing Nexus of unethical retention tactics. Nexus backed off, offering seamless transitions to avoid a PR nightmare. Ethan's consulting gig became a full-time director role. At Pinnacle, the non-compete clause deemed unenforceable, he hit the ground running, rebuilding his client base. Within months, 12 of his 16 Nexus clients, representing $140 million in annual revenue, defected to Pinnacle. The industry reeled. Blogs whispered of a client revolt. Dylan's vision was a punchline. But the real blow came 6 months later. Pinnacle, flush with new revenue, made a bold play. They bought Nexus Solutions for a fraction of its former value. Ethan, now executive vice president, walked into Nexus's old boardroom, the same room where Dylan had fired him. Sarah was gone, Dylan demoted to a meaningless role in a distant office. The oak table gleamed, but the air was different, victorious. Ethan stood at the head, addressing Pinnacle's new team. "We don't sell scripts," he said, his voice steady. "We sell trust. That's what built this. That's what we'll keep building." Matt, now a Pinnacle client, caught him after. "You turned their game upside down, Caldwell. Hell of a show." Ethan grinned, the weight of the past year lifting. "Just getting started." As he drove home, Austin's skyline glowed, a city that had seen him fall and rise. Claire waited, the kids' laughter spilling from the house. He'd won, not just for himself, but for the trust he'd never betrayed. The bourbon on his deck that night tasted sweeter, a toast to a future he'd carved from the ashes of betrayal.